Welcome, everyone, to episode 4 of the Should Have Gone Pro podcast. Happy Friday to all of you that are listening today. Tomorrow we got some big NFL playoff games, but today we're not here to talk football for the first time. We're going to the hardwood. We're going to talk about some basketball, some NBA so far this season. We're going to fill out our all-star ballots. So if you're watching the video version, you'll be able to see us fill out our starters. And we'll talk about the fan voting just came back from that. We both have some ideas for trades we might think happens, and the trade deadline is coming up soon. And we'll talk about what's been surprising to us so far this year. So, Brock, how you doing?
I'm good. Eric. How are you? I'm excited. Like I said, my Bulls play tonight. They're looking good so far. Couple tough injury news. Hopefully, Alonzo Ball can come back, get healthy, and make an appearance for the stretch run as the season closes out. But no, Bulls are looking good. I'm excited to talk NBA. Show we're more than just football guys.
Yeah, I agree. I'm rooting for the Bulls this year as well. It's kind of nice to see somebody else up in that mix for the first time in a little while, and see that team get back to where they belong. So, but yeah, so we're getting close to the All-Star break in a week or I think 2 or 3 weeks now. It's getting pretty close, and we're kind of reaching that halfway point where teams are starting to realize, okay, like, is this what's the direction going to be for this season? Everyone starts off thinking, oh, you never know, but you get to this point in the year, you're kind of figuring out who you are and where you're able to go. So I'll start with this. What's one thing that has really been surprising to you so far this season, that you didn't really expect to see happening, especially at this point in the year?
I think you have to start, all you Lakers fans, I don't think can be happy with how the first 20 so games have played out, or excuse me, the first 40 some games have played out up to this point. Been pretty disappointing. And I think my whole thing coming into the season, I'm not a big Russell Westbrook fan. I've never thought he's been a winning player. I thought he's just put up empty numbers and just been more of a stat guy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really showing this season. The Lakers, I think, were hoping to get a lot more out of him. He's just so wildly inefficient, and you don't expect LeBron James teams to be hovering around 500. In the Lakers case, now they're a game below 500. They're playing the Magic now. So, big game to get back to 500 for them, but it's not something you've been accustomed to seeing with a LeBron James-led team. I mean, he's playing fantastic, leading the All-Star voting. I saw a tweet today that he's led the All-Star voting since 2017, and he's 37. Yeah. I mean, just really a Tom Brady impact on the league to have that much longevity and to be as good for as long as he had, solely in the MVP conversation. Nothing he's doing wrong. The Lakers just don't have as much talent as they did when they won the title back in 2020 in the bubble. Anthony Davis, the fragile superstar, seems like every year it's a new thing. He's got a nick or a bruise. Wasn't really playing all that well up to the point of his injury regardless. And, I mean, as soon as they traded for Russell Westbrook, I knew that the Lakers were going to struggle. They traded a lot for him. They gave up Kuzma and a couple other players, I do believe, as well as some picks. And to give up that much capital for a guy in Westbrook who has been, I personally think, on the downturn of his career for probably the last 2 or 3 years. I think this is his 4th team in 4 years. And when you see a guy bounce around like that, that just has a lot of red flags for me. I never thought he was a good leader. It always seemed like he made it seem like KD was the problem in Oklahoma City. And we've found that out to not be true. Kevin Durant went to Golden State and now in Brooklyn has had incredible success. And I think when you look at the player that Westbrook is, I think he's mostly to blame for some of the Lakers' struggles because he's horrible defensively. He's a wildly inefficient shooter, and he needs the ball in his hands to be productive. And he's just not, frankly, anymore. He's a horrible shooter from not only the three-point line. Now he's getting down below 70% from the free throw line. And as a starting guard, you just can't have that anymore. I think LeBron James would much rather have kept Lonzo Ball when you look at the growth he's had over these last couple seasons. And then when you look at the Lakers roster up and down, there's just so many old veterans that you just wonder how much tread they had left on the tires. I mean, Carmelo Anthony, good for him. He's bounced back. He's been consistent this year for the Lakers. Good for him. It was tough seeing him out of the league and to get another couple chances here the last few years. But the Lakers roster is just old. And I think, yeah, it's great that you have all that experience. But when you look at some of the rosters in the Eastern and Western Conference, there's a lot of youth. When you look at Phoenix, DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, they made the finals last year. Denver with Jokic when Jamal Murray gets healthy. Michael Porter Jr. obviously when he gets healthy, and even Utah. And then Golden State, yeah, they have the Steph and Draymond and Clay aren't nearly as old as anybody on that Lakers roster. And I just think there was way too much age and not enough skill. They struggle to shoot from the 3-point line, which is something you need in today's NBA. And I just think the Lakers roster as it's currently constructed, I don't personally see them making the playoffs as more than an 8 seed or a play-in team. And I think they'll be lucky to get in there if Portland, LA, maybe even Sacramento or the Spurs can get it going. The Lakers are only about 5 games ahead of those teams below them, which is not a lot of buffer zone for as poorly as the Lakers have been playing this year.
Yeah, I'm a Lakers fan since I kind of fell in love with basketball with Kobe, so I'm not going to try and go on a big rant here, but I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that the thing is you were right about the veteran and the age difference with the Lakers versus everybody else, and I think that really contributes to their effort, especially defensively. They were a great defensive team the past 2 years before the Westbrook trade, and they brought in all these new guys. And they had a good mix of veterans and some young guys who could really scrap and play defense. I mean, KCP is not young, but he's definitely not old. Um, and then you had Kuzma. They had Zubac for a little bit, who I thought they shouldn't have traded in the first place a couple years ago. Caruso, obviously, fantastic defender, which I was really upset they let him go this offseason. And it shows that there's guys like Carmelo who is shooting great from three this year, and he's really been an impact guy off the bench for them. I thought he was a great pickup for them, but he didn't fill a gap that they needed to fill. He just added on some more experience. That's why I think we've seen Malik Monk, who's had a fantastic year, and Austin Reeves, their undrafted rookie. They both of them have been having great years alongside LeBron because they're scrappy on defense and they're willing to die for the loose ball, switch on to anybody on defense anytime, and then Reeves and Monk have been some pretty decent 3-point shooters. So that's why those two younger guys who we're seeing as maybe bench guys who could come in for some minutes here and there have really stepped up and been super productive. Their play inside. I mean, they've had to put 37-year-old LeBron at center for a lot of this season, and not surprised when left because LeBron seems like he can do anything at this point, but he's been able to play really well at center despite not playing there his whole career, and you shouldn't have to force him to do that. I mean, he's having one of his best years in a long time stat-wise, and he's 37 years old, and he has to carry this team to a 500 record. I've never been a big believer in Westbrook either. I just think that his play style will fit very certain teams, and there's not many teams out there that still fit his play style. He needs to go to a team that has pieces around him that are a lot of 3-and-D guys and a lot of big guys that are willing to stretch the floor. And Westbrook, he's just been inefficient, and this team's build doesn't really fit his play style. So while I do think he is a lot of the problem, I do think part of it too is just he doesn't fit this team's makeup well enough. So they have a lot of problems they need to fix. They just need guys that get more effort. Stanley Johnson as well. They picked him up, and he's been fantastic defensively for them, and he's been able to get some buckets too. And it's just because he's making hustle plays, and it's just basically just as simple as that. I agree. I don't think they're going to make it super far this year. I think LeBron might be able to will them to make a first-round series a little bit longer than it should be, maybe like a 6-game series, but there's only so much LeBron can do at that point. And when AD comes back, he needs to shoot better than 15% from three or something ridiculous like he was. It's not what it was in the bubble, and they need to find that balance again. So if I were them, I would let some of these 1-year deals with these old players go in the offseason and try your best to get some youth in that locker room and some guys that are willing to make some plays. But they need to capitalize on LeBron playing this well at 37 years old because this wasn't guaranteed by any means, and they're just wasting away what could be one of the last great years of LeBron. I mean, who knows at this point, but um, it's been disappointing to say the least. So
Yeah, and like I mean, I've said as soon as the Bulls signed Caruso in the offseason, I knew that was going to go down as one of the more underrated moves of the offseason. But I mean, Alex Caruso is a tremendous player. He's improved every year he's been in the league. He hustles. He plays great defense. He was exactly what the Bulls really needed this year off the bench to pair with Lonzo. He's a defensive stopper. He's been a lot more aggressive with the Bulls this year, looking to score a lot more. He's a great 3-point shooter as well. And I mean, the Lakers, that was going to hurt them. And I think you've seen so far through this season, they really do miss Caruso. I think LeBron loved playing with Caruso, rightfully so. He's a great player. And he's got one of the more interesting stories. Undrafted, was in the G League, got his chance, made the most of it. Credit to him. He got his bag this offseason with the Bulls, and he's made the most of it and has been a tremendous player. And I think one of the more underrated offseason pickups pickups in the offseason for the Bulls. And I was, like I said, I was thrilled when we got him, because I didn't see him leaving the Lakers. He had just won a championship with them 2 years before. I thought the Lakers would do everything they could to re-sign him. And when they ultimately didn't and the Bulls scooped him up, it's a great move by our front office. Those are the kind of guys you need, those glue guys who were going to bring a lot of effort to win a championship.
yeah, no, you're exactly right. And the thing is, I heard Caruso in an interview once he was playing for the Bulls. I think it was a little bit into the season, and he was talking about how the Lakers, he didn't even want a ton of money. I think he wanted like 2 years, like 20 mils, like 10 mil a year, which for him I feel like is for what he gave to that team and the ability to bring that whole team together. I think that was a little bit of a bargain, especially with how much players get paid nowadays. And he got the offer from the Bulls, and he came back to the Lakers and said, "Hey, like, here's the offer I got from the Bulls. Like, I'm willing to even take a little bit less than this from you guys to stay." And they weren't even willing to get anywhere near that with Caruso, and that's why he walked. So he said he
I
wanted to
mean,
stay, but it was just Lakers weren't even willing to get close to the deal he got from the Bulls, and that's really frustrating to hear as a Lakers guy. So, but I feel like they saw their roster put together on paper, and I think they had like 4 or 5 guys around like the NBA 75 team until Rondo got traded. But and it's like they saw that and they're like, this is fantastic because these are all like legendary guys, but they're just at the wrong time in their career. And I I hate to say it, but I'm getting very similar vibes to when they brought Steve Nash to the Lakers with Kobe, and Powell was getting older. Dwight was still fairly young, but he just didn't fit with that roster well, and it just caused a lot of problems. And I think they finished like the 7 seed and got swept in the playoffs. And I think Kobe might have got hurt that year too. But it was a disaster, and I had that same eerie feeling about this season with them as well. And it's they just need to figure out how to get over that feeling, because like the Lakers love to bring in all these big names all the time, and a lot of times it has worked over the years, but a couple of times like that Steve Nash year and this year, it just doesn't fit together well on a roster. So
And it's like you see all the like, oh, Lakers should go after this guy. I saw one they were talking about. Well, I think even in the offseason, they were thinking about making a move for, I think it was Buddy Hield before they got Russell Westbrook. I thought that would have been a perfect trade for the Lakers. That seemed like a guy LeBron would love to play with, doesn't need the ball in his hands, can stand, catch, and shoot, low ego. And they ended up pulling the trigger on the Westbrook trade. And then like you hear them and all the mix and all these trade rumors. I don't know who they would trade at this point, because Anthony Davis's contract is massive. Russell Westbrook's contract is unmovable. And frankly, I don't think any team in the league right now really would touch him. He's been so bad this year. And he got benched the other night by Frank Vogel, and he said after the game, I wanted to play the players who I thought were going to win the game. And for a former MVP, a guy who's been a multiple-time All-Star, first ballot Hall of Famer, don't get me wrong, he's put together a great career. But for him to be benched like that, and for Frank Vogel to say that he's not making the winning plays to play at the end of the game for a bad Lakers team, it's a little concerning for the Lakers. I don't really see it getting much better than a couple games above or below 500. And yeah, I think they're in deep trouble. I don't really think they have much I mean, they don't really think they have that much of a plan for the future. They gave away a lot of draft picks in the AD trade, and it just feels like they're once these expiring contracts, because they have a bunch of guys on the 1 year deal, like you mentioned. Once those contracts are up at the end of the year, it feels like they're right back to square one again, having to piece together a roster and just wasting another great year of LeBron James's career.
I 100% agree with that as well. I saw like a trade offer that was supposedly given to the Pistons for Jeremy Grant from the Lakers, and I think it was Kendrick Nunn, who hasn't even played this year for them yet. He's been injured the whole year. So I thought that was a good move by them in the offseason to bring some youth into their lineup as well. But he hasn't even played yet, so maybe that might change some things if he comes along. But and then THT, who has been a little disappointing this season. I know the Lakers fans love to hype him up a lot, and I thought he would be decent. I didn't think he'd be like all-star caliber or anything like that, but I thought he'd be a decent role player for a team for a number of years, and he's been a little disappointing this year. He can get to the hoop, but his shooting has been inconsistent, and his effort hasn't fully been there a lot. And then I think they offered like a 2027 first-round pick. It just shows you how little they're getting on assets. Like, I think the kid would be in like 8th grade right now that they're trading for, and it's like, why would the Pistons want to get that pick that far away? They have no idea like what the roster going to look like in a couple of years, in 2027, which is 5 years from now. So, showed you how desperate the Lakers were getting to try and get pieces around LeBron and change things up, and um, it's kind of a weird situation that they're in, and their key was trying to keep LeBron happy, and they're like, well, this a lot of these guys are LeBron's friends from over the years and everything, but bringing in a lot of these guys that played alongside LeBron in their primes, but LeBron's the only one still able to play at a prime level. So that's kind of the big thing there, that they failed to kind of realize, I feel like. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but um, I don't see them making it too far, and I see them making a lot of changes over the offseason again to try and fix things. And I think guys like Malik Monk and obviously Austin Reeves will still be there, and maybe they'll bring back Kendrick Nunn again and stuff like that. It's just some of these couple of young guys that they're going to have with LeBron, AD, and Westbrook, and they got to fill in the rest of the pieces. So it'll be a big question mark, and I'm sure the news will cover it for a lot for the near future. So, um, but I was going to say my most surprising thing, or one of my surprising things from this season, is the Memphis Grizzlies and their rise. I mean, I thought they would be better this year than they were last year. Um, they went into the playoffs, I believe it was the 8th seed, and put Utah, and they won the first game last year, and then failed to get through the Jazz after that. But it was this jump from down towards the playing rounds and stuff where I thought they were on a right trajectory to begin with because they had a bunch of young guys, and then they seems like almost every single one of them took that next step this season and really are reaching more of their potential. Credit to the Grizzlies coaching staff and development guys, scouting guys being able to do this, and I think that the Grizzlies are the prime example currently of how you want to rebuild a team. They've done a lot of stuff with trades to get draft picks, trusting their scouting department. They just built up a lot of assets over the years, and it wasn't super crazy how they were doing either. There was a lot of low key moves. I remember seeing like they would take on like Iguodala's contract to get a pick. They got like Dwight Howard, even though he didn't play for them, to get a pick, and they would do all these little moves to help out other teams and then get a pick out of it. And that just kind of built up a lot of their assets. Obviously, John Morant's a superstar. Um, Everyone compared Ja and Zion being at the beginning of their careers, and Zion's got obviously he's still injured, but he's got a lot of work to do to catch up to Ja as far as uh, their potential and their ceilings. Zion has looked a little sluggish out the gate, but he still looks like he's going to be good. But it's just a lot of questions about his health, his ability to stay healthy, and just kind of his quickness too. But Ja obviously is a superstar and will be around for a long time. Then I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is one of the more underrated players in the league as well. Um, he shoot the free ball. He can get in the paint with a lot of guys. Play good defense. He's a really good all around player. With some good size as well. One of those guys that kind of fits all the pieces together. Um, The one thing that I don't agree with him doing was when they traded away Valanciunas, who was having a great season last year. I think he was one of the guys that should have stayed, and they could even be higher right now if they would have kept Valanciunas over getting Steven Adams. Um, I mean, Desmond Bane is a sharpshooter that people didn't really think about at all coming out of the draft. Um, Dylan Brooks has been hurt a lot, but he's shown a lot of good flashes as well. Brandon Clark is in there, so even Conchar, they got a lot of these guys that are just people didn't really think about them coming into the draft or in the offseason with free agency. A lot of these younger guys people didn't really think about, and the Grizzlies said this guy can fill this role on my team, so we're gonna bring him on. We're gonna have him perfect his role, like Desmond Bane is perfected being the sharpshooter on the wing, the 3-and-D guy. And they've done that perfectly to the point where they fit this roster together that's young, that's buying into the system. The Memphis is known for their grit and grind, and that's exactly how they've been playing. And John Morant has brought a lot of excitement to Memphis and kind of made them must-watch basketball again for the first time in a little while. And I think they're going to be around for a long time alongside Phoenix, who I think is going to be around for a long time too, if they can eventually fill the Chris Paul void whenever he goes. But it's clear that the Grizzlies did the rebuild right, and they know what they're doing. So I thought they were going to be good this year, but 3 seed I did not expect. So a lot of credit to the Grizzlies for not necessarily overachieving, but reaching their potential quicker. So.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think John Morant deserves a lot of MVP consideration this year. I think he could very well be a borderline starter in the All-Star game. It's like you mentioned, they've just done it. They've just done it right. They've built through the draft. And that's the thing that some of these teams don't realize how important it is. But when you have those higher draft picks in the top 10, the top 5, you can't miss. When you're a bad team, you can't miss on draft picks. I'm talking about you, Sacramento. You can't miss on these draft picks year after year. And the Grizzlies have done it right. They got Jaren Jackson Jr. in the top 10. He's been great out of Michigan State, one of their only Michigan State, not really known for their one and dones, but he was great in his freshman year at Michigan State. And I think when you come from a program like that with Tom Izzo, he's been great in the NBA. The 3-and-D, like you mentioned, can shoot it. And then John Morant, those small colleges coming out of Murray State, put on a heck of a performance in the NCAA tournament and came into, I think Memphis is perfectly happy that they ended up with the number 2 pick in that draft. Yeah, you missed out on Zion, but Zion has not been able to play all season this year with, I think, the foot injury. His weight is a huge concern. You heard Charles Barkley and Shaq joke about it, but he's got to get it under control. But John Morant has certainly been the best player, I think, out of that draft, certainly out of the top 3 between him, Zion, and RJ Barrett. And yeah, Memphis has, I think, been the shock of the season this year. I've loved to see it. They shocked the world, I think, a little bit making the playoffs last year. Maybe not shocked the world, but I think caught a lot of people by surprise last year making the playoffs. And I think they're only going to continue to get better. They've got a lot of great pieces around the John Morant and Jaren Jackson, like you mentioned, Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane, who Dylan Brooks went to Oregon. I think it was a late first-round pick, if not second-round pick, and I believe Desmond Bane was second-rounder undrafted. And to just sign players like that, get them to buy into the culture that they have there in Memphis. They're a great young core, and the sky is really the limit from here. If they can get a big name in free agency here or there, and continue to draft well and surround John Morant and Jaren Jackson with great young pieces, I think that championship potential for sure for them, and John Morant's going to go down as one of the all-time greats. I think he's that good. He's a transcendent talent, is electric. If he can start to improve on his 3-point percentage and become a more refined shooter, there's just no way to really say. I mean, I don't want to say it because he's not quite there. I get Derrick Rose vibes from John Morant. It certainly feels like he's twitchy, quick like that, has the hops. And you saw what he almost did to Kevin Love a couple of years ago. That would have been probably the greatest dunk in NBA history. You saw toward the end of Derrick Rose's MVP, end of his MVP run with the Bulls, really improved his 3-point percentage. And I think if John Morant can start to do that as well and be just as lethal from the 3-point line as he is inside the arc, I think he's only going to get better as a player, and Memphis is only going to get better as a team.
I agree. I think that as long as Ja can stay healthy, because the way he plays is so above the rim and so athletic to the point where it can be easier to get hurt. And that's the one thing is if he can stay healthy. He's had a little bit of injuries here and there, but nothing crazy major. And I think if he can stay healthy is the big thing. But other than that, I don't see many downsides to Ja at all. I think he's that kind of guy that even though his 3-point ball isn't amazing, which pretty much everyone requires a 3-point ball nowadays, he can still shoot it, and I think he's only gonna get better over time as he refines his game and gets even better. So yeah, I agree. Memphis is definitely only going up from here, and if you're a Grizzlies fan, you can't be anything but excited for the future of the Grizzlies. So yeah, so you and I are both disappointed by the Lakers and both a little bit happily surprised by this Memphis Grizzlies team. But more thing I was going to ask you about before we fill out our All-Star starter list is we're getting close to the trade deadline. A couple of weeks from now, near the All-Star break is when it'll be coming up, and a lot of teams are looking for that missing piece to kind of finish up their rosters. And certain players have been shopped around. A lot of players in Sacramento, Jeremy Grant. So there's been a lot of questions. CJ McCollum's even been in some trade talks. So what do you think, or what ideas do you have for a good trade for one of these teams to kind of polish up their roster, get that missing piece, maybe get some picks and rebuild for a different team? What are you thinking for a trade at the deadline?
I've got two for you. I'm going to start out first with the New York Knicks. I think they signed Kemba Walker this offseason. He was obviously out of the rotation for a majority of the season. I think the Knicks, they've already been sellers a little bit. I don't know if really say sellers. They got rid of Kevin Knox and ended up picking up Cam Reddish, which I think was a great pickup for New York. Cam Reddish is a great shooter. I really think New York needs to start to throw some of those picks, maybe a couple players Sacramento's way, and try and get De'Aaron Fox out of there. De'Aaron Fox is too good of a player. Having a little bit of more of a down year this year than the years previous in Sacramento. But I think New York should seriously consider going after a guy like De'Aaron Fox. New York has struggled, like I mentioned, at the point guard position all season. He would be a major upgrade for them. You put him alongside R.J. Barrett, Evan Fournier, Mitchell Robinson, as well as Julius Randle. That's a fairly young core, and let them just grow together. I think De'Aaron Fox would be great in New York. It's a big market, get a lot of eyes. And I think that would be the way for New York to kind of turn their season around, start to get a little bit more positive momentum. I know they've kind of slugged their way through the first part of the season here. I think a lot of people expected them to be a lot more consistent, a little bit better this year. I think Tom Thibodeau would love playing with De'Aaron Fox. He's fast. He's quick in the open court. Again, one of those guys that kind of gives you those Derrick Rose vibes, just so blazing quick with the ball, can really do a lot of things for that offense, I think. And then I'm going to lean back toward my Bulls. I think when Patrick Williams went down early in the season against New York, their size was really called into question, and it's been exposed a couple times this year. They play the Bucks tonight. It'll be a little bit interesting to see how they match up with Giannis. They struggled against Brooklyn guarding Kevin Durant. I think they should seriously consider. I actually have a little bit of a list here. I went a little crazy the other day thinking about what the Bulls could do. I like Christian Wood from Houston, another team that's has been one of the worst in the NBA this year. They could be looking to offload anything they can to get players and picks for the future. I also really like Jeremy Grant. Not quite what the Bulls, I think, need. He doesn't rebound the ball all that well on a consistent basis. That's why I think I'm leaning more towards Christian Wood, or even recently I've heard that John Collins could become available in Atlanta. And I think the Bulls should definitely really consider trying to put together a package. I don't think they would need to do that much to get Christian Wood from Houston, maybe the Portland first-round pick that they have this year, maybe a guy like Derek Jones Jr., and another player could be enough for Houston to get rid of Christian Wood, get some assets. Derek Jones Jr. has been a very valuable player this year. And then I think John Collins, that would be the one that I could see the Bulls having to give up maybe a Patrick Williams or a Kobe White, maybe a combination of the two together and a pick. But the Bulls seriously need to consider. I mean, Arturas, can't really pronounce his last name, but Arturas has been great since he's taken over as the GM of the Bulls. And I think it's going to be another big move. They made the Vucevic move at the trade deadline last year. And I think they're going to look to be buyers again this offseason and really improve that power forward position. Because if the Bulls can get Lonzo Ball back healthy, Zach LaVine back healthy, with DeMar DeRozan, you get a good small forward. If you get a young guy like John Collins or a guy like Christian Wood, who's averaging a double-double this year at 17 and 10 for the Rockets, I don't really think there's a starting five in the NBA better than the Bulls at that point. If they can all work together, gel, and get ready for the stretch of the playoffs, I think that would be a great pickup for the Bulls. They definitely need to eye a power forward or some size and depth at the trade deadline if they want to reach their championship potential. This season, I think the Patrick Williams injury was a huge blow because he did play that power forward, was a great defender, and gave them some much needed length. So I think when he went down, that was a huge blow to the Bulls' depth, and they've kind of had to piece it together on the fly since then. They played a lot of small ball. I mean, Javonte Green's 6'4", 6'5". You can't win consistently with a lineup like that in the playoffs, especially against some of these big teams like Phoenix. If they were to make it to the NBA Finals, certainly Milwaukee with Brook Lopez, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then Brooklyn with Kevin Durant and all those weapons that Brooklyn has.
Yeah, you kind of stole my trade out of my mouth a little bit with the Jeremy Grant. Um, I thought he'd be a great fit for Chicago, because Chicago doesn't have, when they get in the playoffs and play teams like the Bucks or Brooklyn, they don't have a Giannis or a Durant to match up. They have a lot of great players. DeRozan's having an amazing year. LaVine's having a good year, but they don't have one of those superstar guys to match up with Giannis or KD or um, guys like that. So I think they need to take a well-rounded approach, and they already have a great lineup. But I thought that one piece I was missing was that four spot, like you were saying. I think Jeremy Grant would be a great fill for that position. Patrick Williams is a young player that they could trade for him. I was gonna say Patrick Williams in a first to Detroit for Jeremy Grant. I mean, Jeremy Grant's been averaging like 20 this season, so he can get buckets on his own. He has been hurt a decent amount of the season, but he'll be back pretty soon. But he can get buckets. He when he was in Denver, he was great, especially when they had that run to the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers in the bubble. He was fantastic there as kind of the spot up guy for Jokic. I don't think I'd be too upset if they kind of went and tried to get him back to Denver again. I think he's one of those guys that's definitely going to be on a lot of teams' radar that looking for a piece. And then you also brought up De'Aaron Fox. I think there's a lot of options of places he could go to. I just don't know what the Kings' asking price will be, since they know he's a good player and they're not sure what they're going to get back in return. There's a lot of question marks. I think the Celtics could be one of those teams looking for a move. They've been hovering around 500 this season, as well as the Lakers, and they're one of those big name franchises who has their star in Tatum. Jaylen Brown is fantastic, but the pieces haven't really glued together. And maybe De'Aaron Fox coming in for Schroeder, who hasn't been bad this year, but I don't think is that guy to help them get over the edge by any means. I think De'Aaron Fox could be a great addition to that kind of space the floor a little bit with his speed and his playmaking, to help get Tatum and Brown some more open looks. I feel like they'd have to trade a decent amount, maybe at least probably one or two first round picks plus some younger guys, maybe like Pritchard or guys like that as well in the deal. And then, of course, there's the 76ers dilemma. People have been talking about Ben Simmons forever, so I'm not going to beat a horse about that. But Tobias Harris has been talked a lot as well. And the problem there is that his contract is so massive that it's hard for teams to be able to take that swing and get him unless they're trading away another big contract. So that's one of those things where a team could really use Tobias Harris as that glue piece, but they just don't have the money to do so. So it could be interesting if there's a team willing to give up a player has that big of a contract to kind of make that swap. So I can see Tobias Harris, Jeremy Grant, and Fox being moved or at least in heavy discussions. And I think the Celtics are going to be one of those teams that really needs to buy that. People always talk about the Lakers and Celtics, but I think the Celtics haven't been talked about enough as one of the teams that should be scouring the market to figure out. Because right now, they obviously are not going to try and tank and rebuild with what they got now. They need those extra pieces, and I think this is the perfect scenario for them. So you did kind of steal the Jeremy Grant trade out of mouth with the Bulls. I thought that'd be a great addition to them. But there's a couple other guys as well that could be some big names moving. So yeah, I would focus on the Bulls making that one last piece, and then the Celtics as well, trying to find their missing link. So.
And that's like going back to the Ben Simmons trade. He's a great player for what he does well. I think there's just so many things that he doesn't do well that it has to be a perfect fit for him. I know a lot of people, I think in the offseason talked about, Golden State. I personally think he would have been a great fit in Golden State. He plays great defense. Golden State needs a bigger body. Aside from Draymond, they had 2 first-round picks. I think Ben Simmons would have meshed well with Golden State, but I just don't know what Philadelphia can realistically expect in return for Ben Simmons, like I said, because it's going to have to be one of those teams that desperately needs a player just like him. They can't expect him to go in there and score 25, 30 points a game and save the franchise. He needs pieces around him, guys who can shoot. I think that's why Philadelphia at the beginning was so good with Ben Simmons. They had JJ Redick, Tobias Harris, but him and Embiid didn't fit well together. And Ben Simmons, he needs to get out of Philadelphia for sure. That city's turned on him. They're brutal up there. They're passionate, rightfully so. But I just think, I don't know if Philadelphia just keeps shooting down some of these trade offers. I mean, I had a buddy send me a couple tweets. Sacramento was going to package Buddy Hield, Tyrese Halliburton, Harrison Barnes, and 2 firsts for Simmons, Harris, and Matisse Thybulle. Pretty crazy trade. I understand that one. But then he sent me another one. The Pistons were going to offer Jeremy Grant, Sadiq Bey, Kelly Olynyk, and a first-round pick for Simmons. I don't know what else Philadelphia – apparently they weren't thrilled about them. I don't know what else Philadelphia can really expect. I mean, Ben Simmons – I feel like Ben Simmons' trade value is as low as it's probably ever been.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they really are expecting to get in return. I mean, a team's not going to mortgage their entire future to get one guy who has shown, one, no ability to improve his game at all, and 2, no willingness to want to improve his game at all. I mean, I hate to keep going back to the Lonzo Ball example, but that was a guy who got in the gym, knew what he needed to work on, has fixed his three-point percentage, has fixed his free throws. And Ben Simmons, at the least, you'd have to have some sort of post move, man. Be able to shoot free throws. You don't have to be able to shoot threes at a 40% clip like Lonzo, but at least have the threat to shoot them. Shoot some mid-range. Do something outside of 2 feet dunking the basketball on a consistent basis. Get in the gym and work. That's what makes great players. Kobe, Michael Jordan were in the gym, always improving the games. And Kobe and Michael Jordan didn't, obviously leaps and bounds above Ben Simmons, but get in the gym and work on your game. You are the number 1 pick. You're getting paid all this money. It just drives me nuts. And just like Andrew Wiggins, these guys have all the talent in the world, and they just seem to throw it away and don't care. And it's sad to see because they such great players and have all the potential in the world and just refuse to work on their game. And I'm done. I'm really just done with Ben Simmons. I think if he doesn't play the rest of the season or doesn't get traded, sit out sit out for all I care, honestly. I think Philadelphia is better off without you if you're going to bring that bring that attitude. I mean, to just not want to get in the gym and work on your game. I just don't get it personally. I don't.
I don't either. You said that perfectly. You couldn't have said that any better than I could. I think the thing about guys like Wiggins and Ben Simmons um, is that they were the number one pick in the draft. They were great players in college, and I think in college they were kind of at this point where it didn't matter what liabilities they had because they were just natural talent wise better than their competition. So they didn't feel like they were pushed to get better every day in the gym. They could just go in and just play how they always play, and it'd be fine because they were the star player on their team. And then they get to the NBA, and they say, "Okay, you're the number one pick in the draft. You got to go out now and do what we expect you to do, be in the Rookie of the Year contention, and grow into this All Star over the next couple of years." And they just didn't have that work ethic, which I think is really underrated for picking a lottery guy. A high pick in the draft is the work ethic and a willingness to get better, because the ego can get so big walking around campus like they're the big shot, and then they get to the NBA playing against where everyone else is naturally talented, if not more than they are, and they're not willing to accept that. So I think Wiggins has done a better job of it than Simmons. Obviously, I think Wiggins just needs to trust his game more. I think he's too passive. And he had a lot of time in Minnesota, he was too passive. Golden State, I feel like it's a lot better fit for him. But as number one pick, he shouldn't be one of those guys where he has to fit into somewhere. He should be one of those guys that can fit anywhere as number one pick in the draft. And then Ben Simmons is obviously a complete mess. I was always skeptical on Ben Simmons even coming out of college, because when I saw he chose to go to LSU, which at the time wasn't a big basketball school, they were in one of their down years for basketball, their down periods, and he went there and he couldn't even take them to March Madness, which were 68 teams in March Madness, and he was playing at a Power 5 school as the number one pick in the draft, and you couldn't take him. Same thing with Markelle Fultz, too. He couldn't take his team to March Madness either, and that was kind of red flag to me. Like, you can't even lead your team, which isn't even a bad team because it's still a Power 5 team, to compete and get in over some of these smaller schools that are still getting in the tournament. And so getting back to what I was saying, I think that the work ethic is really underrated as far as that goes, and I don't think these guys are going to be willing to change at this point. They're too far gone. So one other team that though that I forgot to mention was Portland is kind of a mess. They have a superstar in Dame, a great psychic to him in CJ, but the rest of the roster has just been shuffled every year with confusing pieces and not willing. They just haven't glued together at all, and it's been kind of hazy what their problem has been. I think personally that Portland should just go into full rebuild and kind of retool their roster. Whether or not to really get rid of Dame is a whole different question, but I think guys like Nurkic or Norman Powell are these guys that they could trade away and get a lot of capital back for. I think there's a lot of teams that could really use the shooting of Norman Powell or a great big man play with Nurkic. I think there's a lot of teams that could really use either one of those guys as kind of one of those glue pieces to keep you moving, especially if you got like you need some help on your bench. That's one of the problems with Phoenix last year, why they had struggled against Milwaukee, was because they didn't have a great big man off the bench. Now they got JaVale, who's been playing good for them, but they would have loved using a guy. Yeah, I know, but I would have loved, or they would have loved to have a guy like Nurkic coming off their bench, or so there's a lot of guys on Portland who I feel like could really flourish in other areas, but they just don't glue together there well. So it's there's a lot of questions out there as well.
No, I agree. I think free Dame, honestly. I respect the wanting to win a championship and the team that drafted you. I really do. I mean, Bradley Beal, same way with him. I think he could have gotten out of Washington a long time ago. I still think he probably, even though Washington has been, I think, a little bit better than people have expected this year. Him and Kuzma have done well together, as well as the getting Montrezl Harrell from the Lakers, I do believe.
Yeah.
I think, and they've been a little bit of surprise. I still think, yeah, I mean, those two are too good to not be to not have better around them. I think Portland has done Dame just so dirty. They've
Oh
never
yeah.
really, aside from the year they got this random year they made it to the Western Conference Finals where they got swept by the Warriors
Somehow made it. Yeah.
without KD. I think, yeah, I since then they've just been a complete mess, and I think, yeah, I agree. Blow it up. Maybe yeah, you got to get rid of Dam. You could get an absolute haul for him. Same with CJ McCollum. I think those two guys, once you get rid of them, you could get a lot of draft capital as well as players in return and set yourself up for the future. You're not going anywhere. They always say one of the worst spots to be is what Portland's doing. They consistently make the playoffs, so they're not getting those high picks, and then they're just exiting in the first or second round. They're just stuck in, I don't want to say mediocrity, because making the NBA playoffs is certainly no small feat, but it really is mediocrity when you're not competing for a championship when you make the playoffs.
Yeah. I'd say it's kind of like a no man's land or like kind of stuck in limbo there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a point with Dame where obviously it's good to be loyal to your franchise, the one who drafted you, who's giving you this huge contract, kind of built you up as a player. I'm all for the loyalty, but there's a point where the loyalty can only go so far until the other side of the equation isn't doing their job. And Portland obviously has not done their job in repaying Dame enough for his loyalty. Um, I mean, you look at a lot of big superstars, especially nowadays, even more guys are moving around than ever. And I don't think people would be overly upset at Dame if he left. I mean, if you're a Portland fan, obviously you don't want Dame to leave because he's your guy. But at this point, could you even be super upset if he wanted to leave? I mean, they haven't been able to give him a good team, and he's given them so many chances. And he's been out there recruiting for the Blazers and trying to help bring in guys. And whatever they do, it just seems like it doesn't fit together well enough. And he's just going to waste away the prime of his career if he's stuck in this no man's land. So I think there's a point where the loyalty, while it is great to have that loyalty and you should have it while the other end is filling up their end of the bargain, but Portland just hasn't been able to do that. And I don't think anybody would be upset if he wanted out. So if I was him, I would wait. I would hold out a little bit. I wouldn't cause a lot of ruckus during the season because he doesn't seem like he's that kind of guy to make a whole drama rumor thing out of it forever. But I would think in the offseason when there's a lot easier to make moves and teams have more cap space and roster spots and the draft will be coming around, I think it'd be a lot easier and it'd be a lot. Dame has been always a low key guy, so I think that would be the time where he would want to make that move. And if I was him, I would already be thinking about where I want to go. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it sucks to see star players like that just stuck on teams like that. And you feel for them because I guess we said I do. You got to appreciate the loyalty. I mean, Kobe with the Lakers the entire career. Kobe was a Laker. Same with Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. And I think, but at a certain point, when the organization does nothing to surround you with talent, you have to say, I personally thought the Chauncey Billups hire was a little bit weird in and of itself. I mean, he was a great player, but I thought it was a weird hire for where at all. I mean, I don't personally think Damian Lillard liked it all that much. And yeah, I think Portland is not in a great spot moving forward and are just going to be just really spinning their tires again at this point if they continue to move forward with the same roster.
yeah, I mean they hired Billups, and Billups is really like a point guard mentor, but they don't need that because Dame is already one of the best point guards in the league. So they don't really need Billups to come in and say, okay, here's how you lead the team because he already knows how to do that. They need a guy who can fit the whole team together. They need a guy who can help with their big man situation because Nurkic is good, but he's not at the level where it's kind of like a 1-2 punch because a lot of these superstars need a big man to go along with him, and Nurkic just hasn't been able to fill that gap enough. So, yeah, there's a lot of problems in Portland, but hopefully for Dame's sake, they figure it out sooner or he can get out of there. But Yeah. So are you ready to fill out your all-star starters?
Yeah, let's
Um,
do it.
all right.
Let's do it.
So I'm gonna.
For
All right. So I've got the list right here, or the voting, on NBA.com. Um, I guess we'll start at the top. So these are, well, the three West forwards and then West guards, and we'll go down from there. So, um, do you know who your one of your West forwards is going to be here?
yeah, give me number 23, Mr. LeBron James
Well,
from
six now, yeah.
LA. Oh yeah, sorry, 6. Jeez. Um, yeah, give me LeBron James. He's put together fantastic season. The reason the Lakers aren't the worst team in the West, I think. And yeah, solely right in the MVP conversation, was the leading vote getter from the fan voting, and easily deserves to be captain and a starter on the West's All-Star team.
Yep, I agree. I don't think there's any question there at all. LeBron should be the top guy. I think he will be the top guy, and I don't really have any concern about that at all being what ends up happening. So, rightfully so. He's had an amazing year at 37 years old, of all things. So, no doubt about that for LeBron. So, um, who is your second West forward you got here?
I would first like to apologize, guys. Sorry about that LeBron James thing. That you could you. I know basketball. I promise. I didn't just show it there. That was a bit
He's
of a
been
blonde
23
moment.
for a long time, so I
Yeah,
don't I
yeah.
don't fully blame you. It's
Cut
been
me,
since like 2014 that he was number 6, so it's been a little
cut
while.
me,
So it's all good.
cut me some, cut me some slack. I think second West starter, the Joker from Denver. Again, I think Denver ravished by injuries this year. They gave Michael Porter Jr. that big contract in the offseason. Had that back injury in college, reared its head again in the NBA. I think that could have been a little risky for Denver, but Denver does draft so well. And they got Jokic in the second round. Jamal Murray's been an incredible player. And I think the way they draft, they can afford it. I think once they get back to being healthy, there was a reason they were in the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. They're a great, and they, when the Lakers beat them in the bubble in 2020, they're a great team, great young team, and the Joker has been putting together another MVP caliber season.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree there. He's putting up numbers that we just don't see centers put up. I mean, it's been unheard of stuff. So I definitely, it's hard to disagree with you there. Jokic has to be a starter on everyone's ballot. If you look at what he's doing individually, which is what the All-Star game is, it's not about what the team is doing. He's putting up insane stuff, and his ability to pass out of the post, pull up from three. I mean, he does everything, and it's not like he's a super athletic, like crazy athletic dude. He's just like a little bit above average athleticism, but he's not flying around doing crazy dunks or anything. He's so fundamentally sound. Um, it's it's something that we don't see a lot nowadays, and it's uh it's really impressive. So if you don't watch a lot of Jokic, make sure you do, because while he isn't super flashy as far as his head above the rim, he's a lot of fun to watch. So that's I agree with that pick 100%. That's who I'm going with as well. So do you know who your last forward is for the West?
Yep. That man right there, Carl Anthony Towns. I think
Mm,
he has put together quietly a pretty good season. Minnesota, I think, is another one of those teams that's on the come up. Anthony Edwards is a tremendous young player there. And I think a lot of people sleep on Minnesota, rightfully so, because they've been so bad really since they got rid of Kevin Love. I think they have a lot of potential moving forward if they can continue to hit on some of these draft picks. And I think a lot of the debate here is going to come down to Karl Anthony Towns or Rudy Gobert. Yeah, Rudy Gobert is playing for a better team. But I mean, I could sit here and talk about how bad I think Rudy Gobert is for 45 minutes.
mm.
I'm going to just leave it here. I think he's one of the most overpaid players in the NBA and one of the most overrated. I think when you have a team as good as Utah is every year and they are losing in the playoffs, I think you can expose Rudy Gobert on the defensive end with the small ball lineups. He's horrible offensively aside from dunking and being about 5 feet from the rim and getting offensive rebounds. I think Karl Anthony Towns is a much better player, is having a better season, and I think he deserves to be an all-star starter.
So here's one thing. But before I make my pick, that I'm kind of realizing as we've had this our first NBA episode, is that a lot of these shows they have guys like when they used to have Stephen A. and Skip Bayless, and even with Max Kellerman when they had him on there, and well now Skip's with Shannon Sharp, and a lot of these guys seem to have very contrasting uh, mindsets and opinions and everything about what's happening, but um, for like the bajillionth time today, you've stolen the words out of my mouth about about who I'm picking, because I was going to pick Carly Towns as well. Um, I feel like we agree on a lot of things that we've talked about today. So it doesn't really create for that hot take banter, but it definitely it definitely makes for a good conversation nonetheless. So I am taking Carly Towns as well. I'm taking over Paul George because Paul George is putting up those numbers because he has to. I mean, I feel like with Paul George, who was the other person at the top of that list as far as points per game in the West front court, it's with Kawhi out this year, he kind of has to carry that load. So he's putting up more shots. He's kind of doing it's not empty stats, but the team has not been performing nearly as well as it did with Kawhi, and that's why his numbers are so high. Is because of his usage rate. So Towns is playing with Ant, who Ant needs the ball in his hands a lot too, and Towns still putting up fantastic numbers. I think that this team, give them some more pieces, and they could be an underrated team going forward. Not just this season, but in the next couple of years if they stick together. I mean, Cat's still fairly young. He's not old by any means. He should be in his prime pretty soon if he hasn't already. And I think that this Minnesota team, if you maybe trade D'Lo for a different point guard, who I don't feel like D'Lo is a great fit out there, and get some more help off the bench, and I think that Minnesota could be a sneaky team in the near future. But like I was saying, yeah, we we both agree on the entirety of our front court there. LeBron, Jokic, and Towns for both of our West front courts. So next up is the West guards. So
And man, just real quick, one of the things working against Paul George too, he has been hurt with that UCL injury.
yeah,
So I think that definitely hurts his stock. He could still get in if he gets back in time and plays a couple of games, because I mean he's been a tremendous player throughout this season and really throughout his career. But when you're not available to be out there and play, it's hard to justify giving you a starting nod over guys like Cat and Rudy Gobert and people like that who have consistently been playing. Moving on to the guards now, this is so tough. One of them's not so tough. Give me Steph Curry.
yeah,
The chef, I mean, really enough said, kind of like that LeBron and Kobe, or LeBron and the Tom Brady thing we were saying. You just expect greatness out of him every single season at this point. Was, I think, the front runner for most of the season. He's kind of cooled off a little bit here as of late. Since Clay's came back, ironically, Steph's really cooled off a little bit. But I think he's the greatest shooter in NBA history. Is going to go down as a top 3 point guard of all time.
oh yeah.
And just consistently year in and year out, what he's able to do really has transformed the game. And yeah, I think this is one of the easier, him and LeBron were two of the easier selections for the starters on the West side.
I can't disagree at all about that. Steph Curry easily for the first pick there. I mean, he's the reason why the transformation to the 3-point line being so heavily important is such a huge factor nowadays. And he's still leading this team to the top of the Western Conference. Getting Clay back, I feel like, is only going to help because they'll take some attention off of Steph to get him some better looks, and they have that chemistry that is undeniable. So pretty obvious Steph is the pick there. There's a lot of debate about that. So the other West guard spot, though, could be up for some debate. There are some bigger names here. I almost kind of feel like I wish there were two or 2 front court and 3 guard spots because I feel like there's too many of these guys here in the guard spot that deserve to be starters, maybe over a guy like Towns. But who are you thinking for your other West guard?
A lot of names on the screen right there. Donovan Mitchell, Luka Doncic, John Morant, Devin Booker. I think it's time people start giving D Book some respect. He's been slighted a couple of these times for the All-Star game. And I think I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, Phoenix was just a one-trick pony. That ride to the finals was a fluke. They got lucky that some of the teams they played got injured. Kawhi tore his ACL. The Lakers weren't fully healthy when AD went down with that groin. And but this year, I think they've shown that the Chris Paul effect is real. And Devin Booker has put together another great season, one of the best. It's weird because I don't even feel like you can say Devin Booker's a young player anymore because he's been in the league for 6-7 years now, but he is still so young. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is finally this. I'll give him the respect he deserves, and I'll make him my second starting guard in from the West this year.
I do think that Booker it's not underrated by any means, but I do think that people have not talked about Phoenix as much as they should have this year. A lot of people thought it was going to be a 1 year wonder kind of thing for Phoenix, and it looks like they've really built a team there that can last for a while. The one question I would see is Chris Paul is getting older, and he's one of their best players and kind of the glue to their whole offense that really brought them to this next level. So it'll be a question as Chris Paul gets older and is not able to contribute as much as he did last year and somewhat this year, if they'll be able to keep that momentum going. But like we talked about earlier, and I talked about my surprise of the year, I find it very hard to pick against John Morant. The only person I was debating between him was Donovan Mitchell because I feel like people always sleep on the Jazz, and with the he's such been a huge contributor on the Jazz, putting up fantastic numbers almost every night, and people almost never talk about it because it's Utah and it's not a huge market. Um, and the Utah Jazz team is not the most exciting team in the NBA by any means. So, but I'm going to take Ja here simply for the fact that his growth has been just not unexpected, but it's been so rapid that um, he's kind of made that jump from star to superstar in the matter of like a half a season. So he's been the guy that's really brought that whole team together. If they didn't have him, they would be a mess. So not really a mess, but they'd be still looking for that huge piece that they're missing. So I'm gonna take Ja here. I think that um, he's been one of the focal points of this season, and it's hard for me not to lean towards Ja. Although there are a lot of great guys on that list. So um, we both had Steph, and then I had Ja Morant, and you had Devin Booker. So it's for our audio guys. We had Steph Curry, John Morant, LeBron, Jokic, and Towns for me. And then for Brock, we had Steph, Booker, LeBron, Jokic, and Towns. So the only difference being Ja and Book. Moving down this list here, we're going to the East guards now. Um, the East has always been slacking a little bit in the All Star games, but I feel like this year um, could be turning their tide a little bit. Obviously, it's not East versus West anymore, but I feel like the East is picking up their pace as far as lining with the West in the NBA. It's a lot more even than it used to be. So, how you feeling about these West guards? Who's your first pick?
Um, well, I think this one goes without saying as a Bulls fan. If the Bulls don't have at least two All Stars this year in the All Star game, it's the biggest snub ever. Give me DeMar DeRozan, bounces back, hasn't been an All Star since 2018. Now a five-time All Star. Give me your starting guard for the Eastern Conference, DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, again, there I agree with DeRozan. I'm also picking him. I think the fact that he's been in the league for a while now and he has still taken that jump, kind of to be the co top star with for the Bulls with Levine. Was something that maybe not everyone really expected. I think a lot of people expected Levine still to be their main star, and then DeRozan to be a great like sidekick wing piece, and DeRozan has really stepped up to the plate this year. His 3-pointer is still a little bit of a question mark, but it's definitely improved a lot from what it used to be. He's proven that the mid-range game can still be lethal in the NBA. We saw that last year with the Suns making their run and Booker being a predominantly mid-range guy, even though he shoots the three really well too. But and Chris Paul, obviously a big mid-range guy. So the Suns kind of showed people that, hey, maybe the mid-range game isn't fully dying yet, and DeRozan is fully pushing that agenda. So I'm going with DeRozan as well for my first guard spot. So who do you have as your second guard here? There's
I'm
some decent
gonna
options on this list. So
I'm gonna anger one fan base, really make another fan base happy. Ice Trey has had an incredible so far up to this point of the season. You see it on your screen right there, almost 28 a game, 10 assists. However, that is not who I am picking for my second Eastern Conference All-Star starter. A little bit of a curveball there. I think, again, one of those guys who's been, I think another one of those guys, Zach LaVine, hasn't necessarily played for obviously the best Bulls teams. I do think still up until the last couple of years, a little bit underrated. This year, until he got hurt, I think that was the only thing that might hurt him a little bit, but the Bulls have been marketably, easily, considerably better than they were last year. LaVine obviously has played a big deal into that. I'm going to go with Zach LaVine as my second starter alongside DeMar DeRozan, just simply for the fact, yes, Trae Young has put together a lot better individual numbers. I think Zach LaVine is a lot more consistent, and the Bulls have the best record in the East right now. And I think that should go. I think that should mean something, and I think that should give him the edge over Trae Young and the Hawks, who are not even in the top 10 in standings right now in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, you threw me a little bit of curveball there, saying Trae Young and then pulling the psych on me, but there are a lot of good options here as well. Jaylen Brown's had a good year when he's been healthy. He's been fighting the injury bug a decent amount. The Wizards with Bradley Beal have been a little bit better than we thought they were going to be. Harden's been injured a little bit too, but he's always put up crazy numbers. But I am going to take Trae Young. I'm not going to pull the curveball on that one. And I do look at the All-Star game as more of an individual thing than a team thing. And I do think that Trae Young has had a fantastic year. And even though that the Hawks have had definitely a down year, I thought they were going to take a leap forward this year because of how well they did in the playoffs last season. And they really took a little bit of a downturn, which I was a little sad about from that aspect. But Trae Young is still putting up crazy good numbers. I think that he's definitely far from the problem in Atlanta this season. And I'm not really sure what the problem is in Atlanta this year because they really had a lot of good pieces, and it's really hard to decipher what necessarily their issue is. Maybe it's their defense. I don't know, but I know Trae Young is far from the problem, and at that point, he's putting up those crazy numbers. I feel like I need to put him in there, so I'm going with Ice Trey to get the other spot and have that be one of his bright spots of this down season is being an All-Star starter. So, moving on to the East forwards, we got 3 spots here. What are you thinking?
Hawks fans, please don't hate me. I'm sorry. I had to do it. give my Chicago Bulls some love. You guys had your little run last year to the Eastern Conference Finals. Happy for you. Trae Young, great player. Love what they're doing in Atlanta. A lot of great young talent, but give the Bulls some respect from the turnaround they've had this year. But now I think, we'll move on to the forwards. I can see some Hawks fans definitely a little bit of pushback there, but
hey, well,
I think this.
I'll say I'm happy you didn't pick Trae Young because then we would have even another pick in comments. So I'd be getting a little suspicious that we'd have the same exact picks almost. But yeah, forwards, yeah, go ahead.
I think this is another one of those that's pretty easy. I think when you look at who's been playing well in the Eastern Conference this year, I think my first choice for forward is Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper, the Snake, as some of you guys call him, that were rather upset with his move to Golden State. But I think Kevin Durant's and obviously a terrific talent, one of the all-time greats, one of the, I think, if not one of the greatest scorers of all time for what he can do at his size, can beat you from the 3-point line, mid-range. It was so when he went down with that Achilles injury in Golden State, it really did hurt as a fan. Not so much at Golden State, but just as a Kevin Durant fan, you hate to see star players go down like that. And to see him bounce back the way he has in Brooklyn and put together two really great seasons after rehabbing, obviously, for the first year in Brooklyn, I think it's credit to him, credit to his medical team and everything. And it's been great to see him back on the floor because basketball truly is better and more exciting when Kevin Durant is on the floor. As much as you hate the guy, yeah, the move to Golden State was weak, and you can hate it all you want, but as a talent, you can't hate Kevin Durant I feel like you can hate him as a person and that move, but you can't hate him as a player because the results speak for themselves.
Yep, I agree. I already even put it in my thing. I wasn't even, not even a question for me. Kevin Durant is definitely on there. I think right now he's actually the leader over Giannis for first place in the East to be the captain. So uh, I don't have any debates about that. I think it should be a clear pick for everyone filling out their lineups or their all-star ballots. I mean, he's just a bucket every time on the floor. I will say I was one of the quote-unquote haters when he went to Golden State. And I do think that he kind of caused a little less parity in the NBA for a couple of years being there, and it kind of pissed me off. But I can't deny the guy's talent, and I can't deny how well he's put this year. So zero doubt in my mind about that, Kevin Durant. So the next forward spot, what do you think?
Greek Freak, I feel like another one of those ones that's like shocker, but just so good year in and year out. Tremendous talent. So happy to see him win a championship last year in Milwaukee. Guys received a lot of hate, especially in some of those playoff collapses against Toronto and then in the bubble against Miami. It was so good to see him prevail last year. I'm not the biggest Chris Middleton fan. I think as a number two, he's a very, very weak number two, but it was very good to see Giannis win a championship last year. Another great season for him. And I feel like just another one of those easy ones. Really just move on.
Yep. No, I agree with Giannis. I do disagree about Chris Middleton, though. I do think that he is a good number two, especially for Giannis, because of his ability to stretch the floor. He had a lot of clutch buckets last year in the playoffs for Milwaukee, so I think he should be an all-star again. And I think that Middleton is actually a fantastic fit for being alongside Giannis. Maybe not on other situations. He's not one of those guys that I think you can throw on any roster and he'll be amazing. But I think the situation that they have in Milwaukee, their roster is perfect for Middleton to be able to do his thing as well. And but yeah, Giannis, it's pretty obvious. I'm not the biggest Milwaukee fan, but to see, actually not a Milwaukee fan at all, but to see a small market team win is a little bit refreshing. And to see a superstar win in a small town team and then stay there is good to see for the league, because we don't want every single player running to New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, etc. We need
Maybe Chicago if you want to.
Okay, well, yeah,
You want to.
I'm not complaining about LA either, but I'm saying like it's good for the league as a whole to to have players be superstars in smaller markets to kind of keep the parity in the league a little more. But no, I from a selfish fan standpoint, I'm not mad about people going to LA. You're not mad about Chicago, but Giannis, yeah, it's a pretty obvious pick. There's not too much debating about that. But the last one, I feel like I know what you're gonna pick, and I feel like I'm picking the same thing. But who do you have as your last pick?
I mean, I feel like, yeah, I like Jimmy Butler. Pascal Siakam's done some good things, same as Jason Tatum. But I think, it's hard to pick against the big man in Philly. Give me Joel Embiid, another just ho-hum double-double season for him. Another one of those rare talents in the NBA, can stretch the floor as a 7-footer, great on defense. can score inside, can really do it all on both ends of the floor. And yeah, I mean, it was another great to see him again. Another one of those players that came into the league, has battled through some injuries. That foot injury at Kansas made him miss his entire rookie year. But has Joel Embiid's been one of the probably top 10, top 15 players in the NBA ever since he's really burst onto the scene coming back from that injury.
Yeah, I agree. I already put on my list as well. So, um, Embiid, I feel like the East is a pretty obvious pick this year with a couple guys could be tossed in at the guard, but I feel like the forwards in the East is the easiest part of the ballot to fill out with Durant, Giannis, and Embiid. Embiid's been a beast this year once again. He's putting out 30-point nights on a regular basis. Um, they're winning some games as well. So I think it's hard to disagree with Embiid. I think that the Sixers need to trade Simmons to give him some help, but just kind of push them over the edge to be able to compete for a championship right now. I think that they're really close, but I think they don't have just that little bit to push them over the edge. And I feel like if they traded Simmons, they'd be able to do that. But nonetheless, Embiid's been a beast, and it's hard to disagree. So for all of the audio listeners, we both had DeRozan, Durant, Giannis, and Embiid, and then I picked Trae Young, and Brock picked Zach LaVine. So looking at it here, we really only had two that we didn't agree with, and honestly, I'd be okay swapping out mine for yours, because I feel like it's a pretty even either way. So, yeah, here's our starter all-star ballots. I feel like it'd be a lot more interesting, or at least not interesting but different if we did the reserves as well. But yeah, this is who we got. Do you have any comments about what we just picked? So.
I will say Memphis and Atlanta fans on the West Side, if I had a one, if I had to pick a six man, Ja Morant, definitely my six man. So if there's any consolation there, and then same with Trae Young in the East, my six man, if that helps at all. But no, I think such a great, like, it's going to stink for some of these guys like a Darius Garland, who has put up great numbers in
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell. I think some of these guys are going to get screwed a little bit and not get a look because of it. There's just been so many great players at some of these positions this year. And I think like a Fred VanVleet in the East, as well as Darius Garland, they all deserve to be in the All-Star game, have put up numbers, but sometimes there's just not enough spots and it stinks. But I mean, look, you just keep putting up consistent numbers year after year. I mean, you'll get your recognition, but I definitely think there are going to be some guys you look back at after this year's All-Star game and you're like, damn, I can't believe they didn't make it, or I can't believe this player didn't make it. But I think that's just one of the things that makes the NBA great. There's a lot of competitive players, a lot of competitive teams, and I think it makes things like these a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reserves for these teams is where it's really going to get interesting to see a lot of guys trying to get their first nod as an all-star. And I do think I agree with Garland. I think he's had a fantastic year. Cleveland has been surprising this season, to say the least. I thought they were going to be done towards the bottom, and they're right in the thick of the playoff race. They're almost doing kind of like an Atlanta situation from last year where they're overachieving a little bit and might be able to make a little bit of a run if the cards play out the right way. Another guy is Miles Bridges out in Charlotte. I even though he's a Michigan State guy and I'm a Michigan guy, I'm still a little bit of a fan of Miles Bridges and his game. I think he really improved a lot in the NBA from college. His 3-point ball is really improved. He's fantastic at finishing at the hoop. His athleticism is just off the charts. He's a great guy to put alongside LaMelo out there, who I'm assuming will probably get on the reserves as well.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't even mention LaMelo right there. I think I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's just so many players.
Yes, there is.
I wish each side was 15 players long, but it's only 12, and some of these guys are going to get screwed out of an All-Star appearance, and it stinks. But again, I mean, when you think about Darius Garland's going to be in that all-star conversation years to come. Same with LaMelo if some of these guys don't get in. So I think the NBA is in a great spot. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the year that I think the last couple years, the trend's been, the Eastern Conference isn't nearly as strong or as competitive as the West. And I think this year that narrative's changing a little bit. I think the Eastern Conference legitimately does have some really good championship contending teams: Miami, Chicago, Brooklyn, of course, Milwaukee. And I think if some of these teams can make a move or two at the trade deadline, like New York, maybe Philadelphia, they're all strong. And I think I'm almost leaning towards East, maybe being a little bit more stronger than the West this year, just because some of these teams have underachieved a little bit in the West. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the East is definitely starting to flip the narrative of they're the weaker of the two conferences.
Oh yeah, for years it was the West was the powerhouse, and players were uh, almost like trying to get out of the West if they weren't going to win a title because they want to be with the East with a better chance. Um, and now it's kind of just I feel like it's very very level, and I feel like it's in a good place. Almost every single team has at least a guy or two, even if they're a rebuilding team, where they're like, this guy could be a building block for a future, and I feel like I can trust this guy to be great in years to come. At the very minimum, if they're not competing for the playoffs or a title right now. So I feel like the NBA is in a great spot. There are a lot of guys who I feel like are going to get their first nods as reserves, and I'm really looking forward to when we do our mock All Star draft, and we kind of make up our own rosters. I think that's gonna be a really fun episode. So I'm looking forward to doing that a lot, and give some of these guys that aren't going to be starters, but definitely deserve a lot of love. Give them that attention that they've earned this year. So, uh, but yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm looking forward to the All-Star draft episode. I think you guys will really enjoy it as well. And yeah, just keep sticking with us. I know this episode might have went a little bit long here, but
It
that's
did, yeah.
happens. You get us rolling on this NBA stuff. We can go for days, guys. I'm telling you. I
Yeah.
know I will admit I had the stupid moment with LeBron. I promise, guys, I do know basketball. I swear to God. But
Oh
yeah,
man.
no, I'm excited. So much stuff coming down the pipeline here, and it's going to be. We're in for a great season. We'll probably be back next week, 2-3 episodes. NBA playoffs. Jesus Christ, NFL playoffs. NFL
You're all off
playoffs
whack now, aren't you?
in in the full swing of things here. So, and then yeah, more exciting stuff in the NBA. Hopefully coming here soon. I'm assuming we'll have some head coaching hires, GM hires by then, and hopefully a couple more. Hopefully a couple big name trades that we can keep cranking out content for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of funny when you were trying to make amends with Memphis and Atlanta fans. Um, at this point, with us having these debates and stuff, it's kind of hard to make everyone happy. So, um, but I I appreciate that nonetheless. But yeah, this was good, kind of for a little breaking the ice into the NBA stuff again. We could talk about like every team in the NBA for a while. If we just dove deep enough into it, we could just ramble on and on. So, but yeah, this was a good intro. I'm glad they got to get some basketball in while the NFL stuff's wrapping up. We'll be back next week, like he said. We'll talk about the divisional round, make our championship round picks for the NFL. Maybe do another NBA one depending on what happens from then, or stuff like that. We are going to be working on some new segments. I know I talked about that last week, but we are working on bringing in some fun segments um, that I feel like could be really enjoyable to follow along to. So, but yeah, thank you guys for listening or watching. We appreciate all the support. Again, we receive people reaching out to us, um, friends, family and people from college and everything that have been super helpful um, and appreciative. Shout out to Adam Meyer on the back end for helping us out with a lot of the graphics and social media stuff and everything. He's been a big help as well. So thank you guys for tuning in, and follow Twitter, Instagram, uh, to keep on track of what we're going to be doing. We post on there some things, our reactions to the games real quick if stuff's happening, or and I'll let you know when episodes go live, when we're going to be recording the next one. So make sure, especially on Twitter too, make sure you follow us on Twitter at GoneProPod. And thank you again, and we'll see you next week.